Alchemy Emperor of the Divine Dao, chapter 865, chapter Hassa. In the clash between supreme experts, the battlefield long ceased to be a simple contest of strength. It had become a contest of patience, cunning, and the smallest flicker of opportunity. Ling Han understood this better than anyone. Truthfully, even if he had stood completely still, neither dodging nor parrying, and allowed Aojian's spear to strike him directly, he would have remained unharmed. His body had already been tempered to a terrifying degree, its toughness rivaling godly metal itself. But this was a secret he refused to reveal. Until the moment he could absolutely ensure Aojian's death, Ling Han would not allow that truth to surface. Because if Aojian discovered that Ling Han's body could not be injured, would the dragon descendant continue this battle? Of course not. No warrior, no matter how proud, would willingly fight an opponent who could not be killed or even wounded. Thus, Ling Han waited. Or rather, he created the chance he needed. His plan was simple in theory, yet perilously delicate in execution. He needed Aojian to believe he had found Ling Han's weakness, to believe he could deliver a killing strike. And when Aojian committed everything to that final blow, when his own defences momentarily collapsed under the weight of his full power, that would be the instant Ling Han needed, the instant to strike back, the instant to kill. At their level of cultivation, neither of them would normally give such an opening. Two evenly matched experts always reserved strength with every attack. Even when striking with terrifying force, they retained enough energy to retreat, defend, or dodge if necessary. This was instinct engraved into the bones of every high-level cultivator, which meant if Aojian never believed he could truly kill Ling Han, he would never release his full strength. Ling Han had to convince him. Yet this deception could not be obvious. A careless mistake that appeared too deliberate would only arouse suspicion. Aojian was a genius of the Dragon Clan. His perception was far too sharp to be fooled by crude tricks. Thus Ling Han carefully constructed the illusion. Through painstaking effort, he created what appeared to be a minor flaw in his defense. After several exchanges, that flaw slowly widened. Each clash of blade and spear seemed to expose Ling Han further. To Aojian's eyes, the opening grew larger and larger. And finally, it looked like the perfect chance. The silver spear in Aojian's hands erupted with overwhelming might. The void itself shattered beneath the force of the attack. A thunderous dragon's roar echoed across the heavens as the spear thrust forward like the incarnation of a true dragon descending from the immortal realm. This was an ordinary strike. It was a blow so terrifying that even Maduo Bao himself would likely have perished with resentment if he faced it head-on. And now the spear struck. A triumphant smile instantly appeared on Aojian's face. In his eyes, Ling Han, no matter how monstrous, was finished. Once this attack landed, death was inevitable. Peng! The spear tip pierced straight into Ling Han's chest. Dragon energy surged wildly as the phantom of the true dragon roared and twisted, attempting to tear through flesh and bone to pierce the heart and annihilate the enemy from within. The fabric of Ling Han's robes shredded apart from the force, but beneath the torn cloth, his skin shone with a faint jade-like radiance, untouched, unbroken, completely unharmed. The spear had struck, yet it had failed to leave in the smallest wound. For a brief instant, time seemed to freeze. Aojian's eyes widened in utter disbelief. What kind of body was this? Was this truly the physique of a human? Or was this man actually some terrifying monster that had descended from the immortal realm? Before his shock could even settle, Ling Han moved. "Take a strike from me as well!" He had been waiting for this moment. Aojian had just unleashed his strongest attack. In that instant, following such a strike, his power and defences inevitably fell into a brief lull. It lasted only the shortest moment, but for Ling Han, a single moment was enough. The Revere life sword erupted with brilliant radiance as it flashed through the air. Ling Han unleashed his ultimate sword technique. 10,000 techniques. Returned to one. A dazzling arc of sword light swept forward. Pooh! The blade cut through flesh like lightning, splitting the heavens. A human head soared high into the sky. Blood erupted from the headless body in a crimson fountain, spraying upward like a divine waterfall. The violent surge of energy shook the surrounding space, as though the heavens themselves trembled under the force of that strike. "He's been killed!" When the 7 kings witnessed this scene, their eyes immediately filled with fierce excitement. To them, Aojian's death meant vengeance had been delivered. This arrogant man had dared to humiliate their fallen emperor, to even threaten to whip the corpse of their ruler. The fury in their hearts had nearly driven them mad. Now that Ling Han had severed Aojian's head, the suffocating grief in their hearts finally eased. Yet Ling Han slowly shook his head. He's not dead. His gaze had already shifted toward the distant horizon. The 7 kings were stunned. How could that be? One of them exclaimed. Isn't that his body lying there? Ling Han frowned slightly. That is only his shell, he said quietly. His spirit has already escaped. Normally, while it was possible for a spirit to leave the body, such a feat belonged only to true immortals. And not just any immortal. Only those who had cultivated their spiritual strength to an extraordinary degree could separate their spirit from their physical body. Yet Aojian was clearly still only at the Shattering Void tier, which meant there was only one explanation. He must possess some kind of secret treasure, Ling Han murmured thoughtfully, or perhaps a rare godly medicine, something that allowed his spirit to flee the body. With that conclusion, Ling Han slowly sheathed the Revere life sword. Though Aojian's spirit had escaped, his physical body had been destroyed here. This battle had not been meaningless. Just then, the 7 kings once again cried out in grief. Your Majesty! Today was a day of unbearable sorrow for the Purple Moon Empire. Their emperor had fallen. Their nation's name itself had faded into history. Ling Han released a long sigh. Leave those matters for now, he said softly. First, we must arrange Brother Ma's funeral. The 7 kings nodded in agreement. No matter what else happened, the dead deserved peace. The many cultivators who had gathered for the ritual now became witnesses to Ma Duobao's final journey. Every person present carried deep respect for this unparalleled expert. Ma Duobao had fallen at the final step of splitting open the skies. His death had been for the sake of the entire realm. If he had only wished to preserve his life, someone with his strength could have easily defended himself and retreated. But he had chosen to fight. Some people in this world would always risk their lives for their dreams. And Ma Duobao had been such a man. A grand state funeral was held for the fallen emperor. After all, he had died not merely for his empire, but for the entire realm. The ceremony lasted a full month. At its conclusion, Ling Han personally carried Ma Duobao's body deep into the core of the earth, laying him to rest within the heart of the lower realm so that he would forever accompany the world he had fought to protect. But once the funeral ended, many matters still remained. The transfer of a nation's authority could never be completed with a few simple words. Endless details and complicated affairs required careful handling. Fortunately, though Helian Xunshui was no longer present, Ling Han still had the assistance of an experienced veteran, the Rain Emperor. With his help, much of the enormous burden was eased. Meanwhile, Helian Tianyun once again ventured into the seas. His mission was to reclaim the 4 great oceans. Though Aojian had escaped with his spirit, his body had been destroyed. Even if he reappeared in the future, what could he truly accomplish? Could he still stand against Helian Tianyun? Back in the past, Helian Tianyun had already possessed battle prowess equal to 20 stars of the Shattering Void tier. His monstrous talent had been no less than that of Ma Duobao. Now that he had returned to the Shattering Void tier once more, his strength advanced rapidly. It would not be long before he returned to his former peak. As for Ling Han, he devoted himself completely to cultivation. He knew clearly that he was not yet qualified to split open the skies. To ensure absolute safety, he needed to reach the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier. Time flowed on. People, as always, were forgetful. Although Ma Duobao's final battle had once shaken the entire realm, half a year later most people had already returned to their ordinary lives. Few still spoke of the tragic hero who had perished that day. But Ling Han remembered. The 7 kings remembered. Their determination burned even stronger than before. They would split open the skies. They would ascend as immortals. And when that day came, they would annihilate the 5 sects and the Ao clan. Such ambitions could not be achieved overnight. But none of them lacked patience, nor determination. Meanwhile, Helian Tianyun completed his campaign across the seas. The 4 great oceans were once again unified. And with that conquest, the seas also became territory of the Great Ling Empire. Now the phrase, "all land beneath the heavens belongs to imperial authority," had become reality. If Ling Han wished, he could grasp the movements of every corner of the world. All the resources of the entire realm were now under his command. Combined with the miraculous Black Tower, his cultivation speed soared to terrifying levels. Yet, there was another reason for his rapid progress. In his previous life, Ling Han had already reached the Shattering Void tier, thus the comprehension required for this realm already existed within him. There were no bottlenecks, no barriers. His path forward was completely smooth. Another half-year passed. Finally, Ling Han stepped into the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier. At this time, he was only 22 years old. Standing beneath the vast sky, Ling Han quietly evaluated his own strength. Throughout my journey, he reflected, I have perfected every stage of cultivation, even surpassing its limits. Because of that relentless pursuit of perfection, his present battle strength had already reached 10 stars. In the Shattering Void tier, the difference of even a single star was like the difference between heaven and earth. Thus, achieving this level was already astonishing. If I unleash my full strength, Ling Han continued his calculation, my normal battle power should reach 20 stars. Yet he knew this was not his true limit. After all, he had only just entered the 9th layer. With further refinement of his cultivation and purification of his origin power, his strength would continue to grow. Perhaps he might even reach 11 stars of the Shattering Void tier. And if that happened, his battle power would break beyond the legendary boundary of 20 stars, a new peak would be born, and the path towards splitting open the skies would finally come within reach. The tale unfolds beneath a sky heavy with destiny, where the fate of the lower realm trembles on the edge of upheaval. What Ling Han had witnessed recently was nothing short of astonishing. Ma Duobao's strength had been overwhelming, so powerful that even the greatest elites of the realm could only stare in awe. Yet even that emperor's natural battle prowess could reach merely 20 stars. To surpass such a limit in combat power, that was something that defied the understanding of ordinary cultivators. It was a phenomenon so terrifying that it bordered on legend. Ling Han's thoughts drifted toward another figure, Helian Tianyun. That man, too, possessed the potential to ascend to 21 stars of battle prowess. After all, Helian Tianyun had cultivated a second life using the legendary true dragon Fang. Such an extraordinary foundation would surely make him even more formidable than Ma Duobao. But a thought surfaced in Ling Han's mind, quiet, yet profound. What would happen if Helian Tianyun were empowered by the strength of an entire nation? The question lingered like a shadow. Ling Han himself had already begun gathering that very power. Across the vast lands of the Four Seas and the Great Mainland, the authority of the nation answered his call. Through the mysterious totem formations of the empire, the power of countless people converged into his body. It surged through him like a tidal wave, condensing into an overwhelming force. That power elevated his strength until he stood at the terrifying threshold of 20 stars of the Shattering Void tier. This was the absolute limit permitted by the lower realm itself. No further increase was possible. It was not because the power was insufficient. On the contrary, the energy gathered from the entire nation far exceeded such a boundary. The limitation existed because the world itself could not endure anything greater. Yet for most cultivators, this restriction would never even appear. Their bodies would have shattered long before reaching such heights. The immense pressure of 20 stars of Shattering Void tier power would tear their flesh apart, reduce their bones to dust, and scatter their existence into nothingness. Ling Han, however, was not like other cultivators. His body had already reached the level of godly metal. His physique was forged through the terrifying cultivation of the indestructible heaven, tempered again and again through unimaginable trials. Even so, there was still a problem. Though his body could endure this overwhelming energy, it still could not fully contain the vast national power surging through him. The energy did not permanently reside within him. Instead, it flowed like a hidden current. When Ling Han prepared to unleash an attack, just like how a cultivator could draw upon the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to empower a strike, the power of the nation would erupt outward alongside his own strength. And in that instant, the destructive force of his attack would multiply. Ling Han quietly measured the potential of this terrifying amplification. 25 stars of the shattering void tier? He murmured inwardly. Even he was uncertain. No cultivator in history had ever possessed such battle prowess within the lower realm. There were no records to consult, no ancient manuals to reference. The path before him was entirely unprecedented. Yet one truth remained clear in his heart. When the day came for him to split open the skies and ascend to the immortal realm, he must stand above Ma Duobao. Not merely by a slight margin, he needed overwhelming superiority. But Ling Han's greatest confidence did not lie solely in borrowed strength. His true trump card was his body. When the heavens were finally torn open, the ultimate elites of the immortal realm's 5 sects would undoubtedly intervene again. Their attacks would descend from beyond the realm's boundary, weakened by the barrier between worlds. But even if those attacks retained the terrifying force of 25 stars, Ling Han believed something with absolute certainty. They would not be able to wound him. He silently reflected upon his cultivation. There has been some progress in the second layer of the indestructible heaven scroll, he thought calmly. Although the technique had not directly strengthened his spirit, something equally important had changed. His spirit had become far more stable, firm, unshakable. Attempting to destroy him through the heart of martial arts, through mental suppression or spiritual attacks, had now become completely impossible. The indestructible heaven scroll truly lived up to its mysterious reputation. Its core principle was simple yet profound: indestructibility. Most cultivation techniques enhanced origin power or brute strength, but the first layer of the indestructible heaven scroll strengthened the body itself, turning flesh into something comparable to divine metal. The second layer followed a similar philosophy. Instead of making the spirit stronger, it reinforced its stability, anchoring the soul like a mountain rooted deep within the earth. Ling Han recalled something he had once heard. Immortals cultivated their spirits. When their spirits left their physical bodies, they could act as independent entities, another version of the self. Those spiritual bodies could evolve into golden forms towering thousands of meters high. They could travel millions of kilometers in an instant. Such feats were almost unimaginable. Yet, while the indestructible heaven scroll did not directly enhance the spirit's power, it gave the spirit something equally valuable: security. Just as his body had become indestructible, his spirit now possessed an unwavering foundation. Ling Han slowly exhaled with his current strength. He was ready to split open the sky. But before that moment arrived, there were still matters from the past that demanded resolution. Ling Han understood the consequences of what awaited after the heavens were torn apart. Once the lower realm connected to the immortal realm, countless great forces from above would descend to seize control, and against such powers, Ling Han could not resist. No one in the lower realm could. Resistance would only lead to annihilation. From Yi Shuang, he had learned the truth. The great factions of the immortal realm would not directly annex a newly ascended realm. Instead, they would treat it as a dependent country. Yet the price was steep. The sovereign who opened the heavens would lose the right to rule his own land. Instead, he would be taken away, a hostage, a bargaining piece in the hands of immortal powers. If that sovereign dared to resist such arrangements, he would immediately be sent to the battlefields at the boundaries between realms, and there, death could come within minutes. Thus, the truth was cruel. Splitting open the sky would allow the living beings of the lower realm to escape the fate of being refined into a realm pill. It would grant them a far richer cultivation environment, but the hero who made it possible would lose his freedom. Perhaps he would remain a sovereign in name, yet in reality he would be nothing more than a puppet. Ling Han, however, did not fear such a future. In his heart burned an unwavering belief. Shallow waters might trap a true dragon for a time, but never forever. His eyes slowly opened, filled with quiet determination. First, he said softly to himself, I will visit the Wind Moon sect. Without bringing a single companion, Ling Han's figure blurred into motion. He soared across the sky like a streak of lightning, heading directly toward the mountain stronghold of that infamous sect. Years ago, Ling Han had killed Hu Qingfang, the only son of Hu Jianyi, the sect master of Wind Moon sect. That act had provoked a relentless pursuit. Hu Jianyi himself had chased Ling Han across the land, seeking vengeance. Only through the intervention of Feng Po Yun had the conflict been temporarily halted. Yet before departing, Ling Han had spoken a promise. One day, when his cultivation reached the heaven tier, he would return and he would uproot the Wind Moon sect entirely. Since then, his days had been consumed by cultivation and battles of far greater scale. Only now did he finally have the time to settle that old score. His speed had become unimaginably fast. Within a single day, Ling Han had already arrived before the main gate of the Wind Moon sect. At first glance, the sect appeared serene. White clouds drifted gently around the mountain peaks, wrapping the cliffs in an ethereal veil. From the outside, it resembled a sacred land of cultivation. Yet Ling Han knew the truth hidden beneath that tranquil facade. This was a nest of corruption, a place where vile individuals were sheltered, where sinister practices were tolerated. Behind its beautiful scenery lay darkness deeper than the abyss. Ling Han raised his right hand. A flash of light emerged. From the black tower leapt the rock spirit. The stone creature landed beside him with a heavy thud, its rocky body radiating immense power. Ling Han spoke calmly. "Tear it apart." At those words, the rock spirit's face broke into a wide grin. Old stone excelled at destruction. With a booming crash, pang! The rock spirit rushed forward. Its fist slammed into the sect's massive gate. The structure exploded instantly. Stone fragments scattered in every direction as the gate was blasted apart. The disciples guarding the entrance were thrown into chaos. Gravel rained down upon them like deadly hail. The moment those fragments struck their bodies, they felt pain so intense it reached their very bones. They screamed in agony. "Who are you?" they shouted through clenched teeth. "How dare you break into the Wind Moon sect?" Despite their terror, they still tried to demand the intruder's identity. If they returned without answers, the sect's higher-ups would skin them alive, but the rock spirit paid them no attention. Its thick arms swung through the air. It did not even need to strike directly. The gale produced by its movements alone shredded the disciples into bloody mist. The creature had already reached the shattering void tier, specifically the third layer. For a being of such power, destroying these guards was effortless. Meanwhile, Ling Han walked forward slowly, his hands clasped behind his back. He moved deeper into the mountains. Along the path, disciples of the Wind Moon sect rushed out in alarm. "Who are? Stop right! Ah! Hurry and inform the sect elders! Ah!" Their shouts never finished. The rock spirit smashed them all to death. Even the stronger cultivators were helpless. And when a deity transformation tier elite was obliterated with a single strike, the remaining disciples finally lost their courage. None dared step forward. They could only stare at the rock spirit with terrified eyes. Just what kind of monster was this? Its strength was utterly incomprehensible. Ling Han's voice rang out coldly. "Kill all of them." Under normal circumstances, he might have shown mercy. He would have allowed the innocent to leave. But Wind Moon sect was different. Every disciple here cultivated the harvest supplement technique. Their power had been built upon the suffering and death of countless victims. For people like this, there was only one proper fate: death. The rock spirit faithfully executed Ling Han's command. Its spiritual sense expanded outward, covering the entire Wind Moon sect. Not a single person would escape. For a cultivator of the Shattering Void tier, such control was trivial. Just as the slaughter continued, a furious voice echoed across the mountains. "Stop!" Hu Jianyi appeared at last. His teeth clenched tightly as he stared at Ling Han. His eyes burned with hatred, but beneath that hatred lay something even stronger: fear. Only a few short years had passed, yet the young man he once hunted had now grown into a figure he could only look up to. Hu Jianyi had always known that Ling Han might surpass him someday, but he had never imagined that day would arrive so soon. "Stop," Ling Han replied calmly. "To whom are you giving orders?" His tone was utterly indifferent. The rock spirit ignored Hu Jianyi completely. Its fists continued crashing down upon fleeing disciples. No matter how far they hid, the rock spirit could crush them from afar with a single strike. The difference in power was simply too vast. Hu Jianyi's face twisted. "If you refuse to stop," he said coldly, "then these women will die." He pointed toward a platform halfway up the mountain. Ling Han turned his gaze. There, hundreds of young women sat in rows. Each one had a blade pressed against her neck. Behind every woman stood a Wind Moon sect disciple with murderous intent in their eyes. Hu Jianyi spoke slowly. As long as you promise not to make things difficult for the Wind Moon sect, I will swear that from this day forward the sect will abandon its evil practices. We will walk the righteous path of cultivation.